You have probably passed one on the highway and not thought twice. A massive American semi-truck, long nose, chrome stacks, 80,000 pounds of freight doing 70 miles per hour across flat interstate. And you have probably seen videos online of European trucks, a Scania, a Volvo, flat-faced, compact, producing 770 horsepower, nearly 200 more than the most powerful American truck on the market. Same cargo, same 18 wheels, roughly the same size, but almost 30% more power. And the obvious answer jumps right to the front of your brain: American trucks are behind. European engineering is more advanced. Regulations are holding something back that is clearly possible, but that is not actually the reason. Not even close. The real answer involves 4 separate systems: engineering, regulation, history, and geography that locked into place at specific moments over the last 70 years. And not one of them is what you are thinking right now. The answer has layers. Most people only ever hear the first one. By the end of this video, you will understand all of them, and you will realize the machine you have been driving past your whole life is not what you thought it was. Let us start with what everyone gets wrong. Here is what most people assume when they hear that European trucks have 770 horsepower and American trucks top out at around 605. European engineers figured something out that American engineers have not. Maybe it is better technology. Maybe it is ambition. Maybe the US market does not push manufacturers hard enough. None of that is true. American manufacturers know exactly how to build a 770 horsepower diesel engine. They choose not to. The reason starts with a question that sounds almost too simple. How much power does it actually take to move 80,000 pounds down a flat highway at 65 miles per hour? The answer is approximately 200 horsepower. Not 600, not 770, around 200. That is what it takes to maintain a steady cruise at highway speed on level ground. The rest of the power in a 600 horsepower American engine, the other 400 horsepower, is there for acceleration, for climbing grades, for reserve. It is not sitting idle, but it is not being used constantly either. Industry engineers describe it as power in reserve, available when you need it, invisible when you do not. So why not install a 770 horsepower engine and call it an upgrade? Because more horsepower means more fuel consumed, more heat generated, more complexity in the engine and emission systems, a higher purchase price, and higher maintenance costs across every service interval for the life of the truck. In American long-haul trucking, where a rig might cover from 100,000 to 150,000 miles per year, fuel and maintenance are the 2 largest operating costs. An engine optimized for peak power instead of sustained efficiency does not just add cost at the pump, it adds cost everywhere. Horsepower is actually the wrong unit to be measuring. Horsepower tells you how fast work is done. Torque tells you how much force is available to do it. When you are moving 80,000 pounds from a stoplight, climbing a grade, or pulling a trailer out of a loading dock, torque is the number that matters. The most powerful American truck engines, the Cummins X15 and Detroit DD16, produce around 2,050 pound-feet of torque. The Scania 770 produces approximately 2,730 pound-feet of torque. The Scania wins that comparison too. But here's the critical question. Is that extra torque actually useful in the conditions American trucks operate in? The answer to that question takes you somewhere most people never think to look. But that is only half the story. The real reason American trucks are built with different power targets is not about what engineers can build. It is about what the road itself demands. To understand that, you need to know about a regulatory change in 1982 that erased an entire category of truck from American highways almost overnight. That long nose on an American semi-truck, the hood stretching out in front of the cab, looks like it has been there forever. It has not. For most of the 20th century, American highways used a completely different kind of truck. Through the 1960s and the 1970s, the dominant American semi was a cab-over, flat-faced with no nose, the driver sitting directly above the engine. If you have seen a European truck, you have seen what American highways once looked like. The reason was simple. Federal law at the time limited the total length of the tractor-trailer combination, truck and trailer measured together, to 65 feet. To fit a long trailer within that limit, you needed a short cab. Shorten the cab by removing the nose, and you could legally carry more cargo. The cab over was an engineering response to a regulatory constraint. Then in 1982, the Surface Transportation Assistance Act changed one number. Maximum length now applied only to the trailer, limited to 53 feet, not to the overall combination. The truck itself could be as long as needed. Almost immediately, the long-nosed conventional truck became the preferred design, and the cab over started disappearing. Peterbilt stopped making them entirely in 2005. Freightliner stopped in 2006. Europe never made that change. European regulations still measure total combination length, currently approximately 18.35 meters. That is why European trucks are still flat-faced. It is not aesthetics, it is law. But the American long-nosed design didn't survive just because the law allowed it. It thrived because physics demanded it. Aerodynamic drag increases with the square of speed. A truck moving at 75 miles per hour on a Kansas interstate faces enormously more air resistance than a truck electronically governed at 56 miles per hour on a German Autobahn. That sloped hood on an American conventional truck guides air up and over the trailer instead of letting it slam into a vertical wall. Run a flat-faced European cab over at American highway speeds, and the fuel consumption would be catastrophic. American trucks became long and aerodynamic. European trucks stayed compact and powerful. Two different shapes, built for two different speed environments. But here's where it gets genuinely strange. That speed difference does not just explain the shape. It explains why more horsepower above a certain point becomes irrelevant in America. And that answer runs through a number that has been governing American trucking since 1974. In 1974, Congress locked in the ceiling that American trucking has operated inside ever since: 80,000 pounds gross vehicle weight on the interstate highway system. It was established to protect pavement and bridges from concentrated axle loads. 80,000 pounds became the wall. Here is why that matters to the horsepower question. The European Union allows 5 axle trucks to haul approximately 88,000 pounds, roughly 10% more than the United States. In Sweden and Denmark, timber trucks run at legal weights exceeding 60 tons, more than 130,000 pounds. If you are hauling 130,000 pounds up a steep, sustained mountain grade, 770 horsepower is not extravagant. It is physics. If you are hauling 80,000 pounds across Colorado at 65 miles per hour, the same 770 horsepower represents power that has nowhere useful to go. This is the part nobody talks about. The Scania 770 isn't a better truck than an American semi in any absolute sense. It's a perfectly matched truck for different operating conditions: extreme payloads, steep grades, dense road networks with short, high-demand hauls. The 770 horsepower engine was built specifically for Scandinavian timber and mountain operations. Those conditions simply don't exist on American interstates. American engine philosophy, since the early 2000s, has moved in the opposite direction, toward downspeeding. Running at lower RPM at cruise saves fuel. Volvo Trucks introduced the first downsped powertrain to North American long haul in 2011, dropping engine revolutions at 65 miles per hour from 1,350 to 1,150. Each 100 RPM drop saves approximately 1% in fuel costs. Across a large fleet, the math dwarfs any theoretical benefit from an extra 170 horsepower. But this still doesn't close the full picture, because it explains why American trucks don't need 770 horsepower. It doesn't explain why those operating conditions came to be so different in the first place. Why American trucks run heavy loads across flat, long-distance corridors, while European trucks climb mountain passes with heavier payloads. And that answer connects all 4 pieces, and it's hiding inside a decision made before most of the trucks on the road today were built. On June 29th, 1956, President Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act, 41,000 miles of interstate highway, the largest American public works program to that time. Eisenhower had two images in his mind when he pushed for it. One was the memory of a 1919 Army convoy that took 62 days to cross America on roads so degraded they averaged 6 miles per hour. The other was what he had seen during World War II, the German Autobahn, a highway system built for speed and military logistics. What came out of that 1956 act was not just roads, it was a decision about what kind of freight movement America would have for the next century. Wide lanes, controlled access, gentle grades engineered for sustained high-speed travel, long, uninterrupted runs between major cities across the Great Plains and the Midwest. Designed not for alpine passes, but for the flat corridors connecting port cities to interior distribution centers. That design decision created the American freight environment. Long distances, rolling terrain, high sustained speeds, heavy standardized loads capped by a federal ceiling, and it created the optimal truck for that environment, a long-nosed conventional built for sustained low RPM efficiency, aerodynamically shaped for speeds European trucks never reach, with enough power reserve to handle hills but optimized for steady cruise. The same engine manufacturers operate on both sides of the Atlantic. Volvo, Daimler's Freightliner, Traton, which owns Scania, they are not confused about how to build a 770 horsepower engine. They build them for Europe. They build 600 horsepower engines for America, because the question was never how much power can we put in the engine. The question was always, what does this specific road actually need? And once you understand that, you are almost at the complete picture. But there is still one thing to assemble, the piece that ties all four of these systems into a single answer. It has been hiding in plain sight every time you drive past one of those long-nosed semis on the interstate. So here's where you actually land after all of this. You came in looking at that long-nosed American semi on the Kansas flatlands and thinking about missing horsepower, about why European trucks got more of it. Maybe you assumed it was regulation or engineering ambition or something America just had not caught up to. But what you were actually looking at was this: a 1956 Highway Act that designed an entire freight environment around long distances, flat terrain, and sustained high speed. A 1974 weight limit that capped American loads at 80,000 pounds, while Scandinavian timber trucks run legally at more than 130,000 pounds. A 1982 length rule that killed the cab over and created the long-nosed conventional as a direct aerodynamic response to speeds European trucks never reach. And a 770 horsepower Scania engine built specifically for those Scandinavian mountain loads. Those conditions have no equivalent on Interstate 70. The American truck is not a European truck with less power. It is a completely different answer to a completely different question. 4 decisions across 70 years, each one locking in a piece of the operating environment that made moderate power, high torque, aerodynamically efficient trucks not just the choice, but the only logical outcome. Next time you pass one of those long-nosed semis doing 70 across the flats, you are not looking at something left behind. You are looking at 70 years of regulatory and engineering decisions working exactly as intended. And if you think the weight limits on American roads are carefully calculated, wait until we get into what actually happens to bridges when axle loads are even slightly wrong. One engineering formula from 1974 is still the only thing standing between American highways and catastrophic structural failure.